It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Let's actually pivot it. Let's talk about what does it cost? What does it take to create $5 and $10 million?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that you'll never get to $5 million unless you get to $1 million first. Like that's the thing that you have to do. And so he said, okay, well, let's talk about what does it take to get there? How much does it take to actually get to $5 million? And FTE Daniel, in true FTE Daniel fashion, put together a great illustration. And this is what he found. How much of a lump sum would you need to invest at each age in order to get to $5 million by the time that you get to 65? And for a 30-year-old, if you've accumulated about $217,000, that $217,000 by the time you get to age 65 will have turned into $5 million. So there's kind of your number if you want to have something to shoot for. Or if you want to think about a monthly savings amount, if you can save $1,700 a month starting when you're 30 all the way until you're 65, you can have it turn into $5 million. For a 35-year-old, you need almost $400,000. You need about $394,000 saved up, or you need to commit to saving a little over $3,000 a month. And then for a 40-year-old, if you want to get to $5 million by the time you get to 65, you ought to have saved up $681,000 or be committed to save $5,257 per month, starting at 40 if you're at 0, all the way until 65. It gets a lot harder the older that you get. Because what you can see is if you're a 45-year-old, what's it take to get to $5 million? Well, then you have to have $1.1 million. What I think is really encouraging is we know a lot of folks who are at that $1.1 million level in their mid-40s because they did the thing in their 20s and 30s that they were supposed to. If you're waiting and starting at 0, that becomes pretty daunting. But the bigger your army of dollars get, the more soldiers you have recruited, the more powerful it can become. And what I think is really, really remarkable is for a 50-year-old, if you can get your assets by 50 years old to a touch under $1.8 million, $1,755,000 without saving anything else, that army of dollar bills is on track to be at $5 million by the time you get to 65.
And now, no doubt, we attract financial mutants. There's a lot in our audience that you're well on track with all these numbers, but I don't want to lose focus to the motivating factor of what $1 million is. Because I still think $5 million is aspirational.
Sure.
A lot of you guys will reach either $5 million, Deca-millionaire with $10 million status. But I want to still remember there's a whole group, the Bows and the Browns, who have not arrived yet, but you're trying to figure out this whole financial education thing, and you've stumbled across the Money Guy show. $1 million is still a lot of money. That's kind of the purpose of today's show. And we've put together a lump sum. Remember, we've already covered what you need to save each month to get to status. Now let's talk about if you had a lump sum status so you can compare where you are in your savings.
And so a lot of times we'll have parents say to us or grandparents say to us, I want to set up Junior, I want to set up my granddaughter to be a millionaire by the time they retire. How much money would I need to invest if I want to do that? And so we said, yeah, it's a really novel idea. Let's create a deliverable. And so we found out if you have a brand new newborn and you want to just put a lump sum of money in an account to grow for them for the next 65 years, you would need to deposit $1,544.
That's amazing.
$1,544 can turn into $1 million. Or maybe you have that high school senior that's about to graduate. And you say, you know what, for graduation, you've made good grades, you're going to college, I want to set you up. I'm going to open up an account, and I'm going to put in $9,274 in the account for you when you graduate high school. And if you will just leave it there, I have seeded the first $1 million of your retirement portfolio. So if this is something you're curious about, go to the website, moneyguy.com/resources. Go print out this deliverable, and you can see for where I am at my age, do I at least have this much saved up? And if I do, then I'm on track for millionaire status by the time I get to retirement.
And if you're one of those folks that still thinks $1 million isn't a lot of money, multiply by 2, multiply by 3, whatever the number is that you have in your head that is actually reaching kind of wealth status. But I want to kind of go back to what David asked us when he wrote the comment on YouTube. How many millionaires are there? Okay. How many 5 millionaire people out there? We actually had FTE Daniel go pull the data points.
Because David said he wasn't really that impressed. He said, don't talk about millionaires. he didn't say this, but tell me if you inferred this same thing. He said that's not that impressive. Right, if you just own a house, you're a millionaire. That's not that impressive.
Well, he all but alluded to the Robin Leach lifestyles of the rich and famous of the 80s and 90s, still talking about $1 million in 2021 in that same vein. But it is to the point that this is still a very elusive goal, and the data kind of supports that. I mean, if you notice, look, how many households in the United States have $1 million? And you can see it's 12% of the population. A little over 15 million households have $1 million.
And so if you can just kind of stop there, if you're someone who you've done the hard work, you've saved, you've built wealth, and you've crossed over that 7-figure mark, you are already there in pretty elite company. That's a unique. So for David to say, oh, $1 million isn't that special, I'm going to argue it is pretty special. It'll put you in the top 12% of this country just by crossing into that one threshold.
There's something I can't help but notice from a numbers standpoint. Just like we know, I remember when we did our Back to the Future episode and we recognized the DeLorean had to reach 88 miles per hour before it actually could time travel.
Right, yep.
Notice the backside of this. 88% never reach millionaire status. So, I mean, once again, I'm telling you, these numbers swim all around us, guys. Use this to your benefit. And then Bo's already said, look, a lot of you're thinking you live in a coastal city, $1 million, not much. How about $2 million? You can see it drops the number down to 6% or a little over 8 million households. And then we even went a step further with $5 million is 3% of the population or a little over 3.5 million. And then look at this. If you want to know where the 1% is, there's a little under 1.5 million households that have Deca millionaire status.
So David, if you're out there listening and you're still a fan, which I hope that you are, and you said, well, talk to me about the 5 million, talk about the 10 million, about 3% of American households make it to that level. About 1% make it to the 10 million level. But again, we've said this over and over and over. Before you can get to the 1% and before you can get to the 3%, you got to get to the 12%. You got to get to that first million first. And $1 million is still a lot of money. There's still a lot that $1 million can do for you.
I feel like this show has been an EKG in the fact that we talk about how valuable $1 million is, but then we scratch the itch of those that are aspiring to go even higher to 5 million, 10 million.